The fourth one was the one that founded Pairpoint, which is owned by Vodafone and Sumitomo. I believe it's the biggest sort of platform, the telco platform involving Web3 in the world. And Pairpoint was an IoT use case.
It's a new shift as well. It's not like just any layer one that they are trying to compete with each other. People now understand that if they have a particular use case, they need to have an infrastructure backing that. It's like having your own server. It's simple as that.
Models play an absolutely critical part in getting access to this infrastructure for communities and countries and socioeconomically, right? It's a way where you can pool together, and the tokenization models can make these, this infrastructure available in these countries.
What are the factors that made you want to imagine a future where telco needs blockchain, where these IoT devices eventually need to be connected through blockchain, and it becomes a necessity rather than an add-on feature? Hi David, how are you doing today?
Harman, I'm doing really well. I'm really pleased that we managed to finally get this podcast arranged, and I think it's a great time given everything that's happening in the world of Web3, blockchain, crypto, and this exciting area. So yeah, I'm really happy to be on.
Thank you so much, David, and I'm pleased to welcome you to What Are You Tokenizing? Just for a brief context to the audience, I've been connected with you for a long time over LinkedIn. I've seen your work firsthand, how it's been progressed over the years, the kind of amazing things you have done at the intersection of telco, IoT, blockchain. And it's mostly a dream for all of us to understand how these different technologies work together, but you have been doing that for a long time. And I remember 4 years ago trying to start a podcast session with you. For some personal reasons I couldn't do that back then, but God gave me a chance again, and I'm happy to have your thoughts, your vision, your expertise to be shared with our audience. So glad to have you here.
Absolute pleasure.
So before we start, definitely the de facto way to start, please do let the audience know about your experience. I would love for them to understand the kind of work that you do, especially at Vodafone right now. Please.
David Palmer, I've been working in the area of Web3 and blockchain for maybe the last 10 years, right? It's been a long time. I've been there at the beginning of the journey when this was something that wasn't taken seriously right through. And I've been working in the area of telco maybe 30 years. So you can see where the intersection comes through. I'm the co-founder. So I was the sort of blockchain lead for Vodafone. So one of the people looking at use cases for telecommunications of blockchain maybe 7-8 years ago. And part of what we were doing then was looking at 4 use cases that could be taken through to MVP. As a result of that process, I'm also the co-founder of a new platform, which Vodafone is now the majority owner of, along with Sumitomo Corporation, called Pairpoint. And Pairpoint is all about how you can link IoT, blockchain, AI, i.e. Web3, fintech together to create what we call a new economy of things and power the new economy of AI. I'm also the author of a book called The Business of the Metaverse, a guide to how AI and Web3 can be used by business. And that's published by Kogan Page. And I'm an international speaker, so I speak all over the world on what we're doing in the areas of Web3 and Pairpoint, but also generally on how Web3, AI, and IoT are converging and the sort of benefits from that.
Amazing. That really summarizes your experience very well, and I'm glad to specifically know about the book that you have written, and Web3 for businesses. That's what's needed. I'm sure we'll get a lot of insights from that during this podcast.
I should have a copy here, right? So for those of you, I've got it here.
Amazing. The business of metaverse. Wow.
Yeah, so how organizations can optimize the opportunities of Web3 and AI. And I think this is important because this, where I think Web3, blockchain, have missed is that we focused on the technology, not on the business. I think now with the changes that we're starting to see, Bitcoin find a role as a store of value, right? So now you're seeing, how can companies, countries, individuals start to incorporate Bitcoin as a digital asset? How does that work in portfolios and hedge funds and treasuries? And then we're starting to see other areas in the areas of tokenization and real world asset tokenization, where you're starting to see the whole RWA industry start to be a part of the wider financial and fintech landscape. So all of that is about business. I come at it slightly differently, but connected, which is how can business assets, i.e., IoT devices, cars, drones, connected devices, essentially feed information into smart contracts that can fuel token investments and reward models. So I can go into that a bit later. But these, the whole landscape of business is connected, and now we're starting to see that sweet spot where Web3 is starting to become part of those new business models and frameworks, and I think that's exciting, right? So that's some of the things we touch on in the book. Of course, one of the other aspects is, the big topic is AI, and we're moving towards the AI economy, and we're building a new digital infrastructure for a new digital world. And part of that, the metaverse will be part of that, right? Virtual experiences will be part of that. And as AI grows, the virtual environments in which we interact with AI. So physically, you have AI robots, but virtually, you're going to have avatars and virtual workplaces and virtual meeting rooms and virtual call centers. And all of this will be where essentially the metaverse becomes AI on Earth, and you start to see it increase as the manifestation in which people interact with services, content, and AI.
100%, 100%. And what you are saying also resonates with something that I very often say. Usually, what happened in blockchain and AI previously was that people built a solution, then they started out finding a problem, while it should be the other way around. You should know what problem you are solving before building a solution. I think that's where businesses need to incorporate these solutions after identifying what they lack and what they need, right? And I'm sure the book will benefit a lot of such businesses to understand that more in detail. So, while we have seen blockchain in many areas, like we have seen it in supply chain, legal industry, traceability solutions, NFTs. Telco is one industry where everyone feels like they know why telco needs blockchain but cannot really pinpoint the reason. And I would really love to know your thoughts on what are the factors that made you want to imagine a future where telco needs blockchain, where these IoT devices eventually need to be connected through blockchain and it becomes a necessity rather than an add-on feature.
Really good point you made. And this is a discussion I had with the then CTO of Vodafone, a guy called Johan Weiberg. And, I was very passionate about blockchain, and I used to pester the CTO on why don't we do blockchain? And he turned to me and he said, Dave, this is great, but people don't talk about all this, a great database and why we need this database. They talk about the application and the benefits of the application or the use case that's associated with it. So he said, come from the business side, and that was some of the best advice that I had while being an evangelist for blockchain within the telco. And when you look at the sort of reasons for it, some of the reasons for not having blockchain or where it's not going to add value are internal ones, right? So a lot of the initial thinking was, okay, we could have blockchain used in our internal applications. We could use it for this and that. And it became very clear that, internally within an organizations or a big conglomerate like Vodafone or other big enterprises, you have internal trust, right? If you think of the primary function of blockchain as providing trust, you have internal trust. So actually, for internal based use cases, blockchain adds zero value. It's a glorified database, right? An expensive database. Where blockchain starts to add value is where you have external parties that you're interacting with, and you don't have a basis of trust, or you don't have a trusted system of record, or you don't have the automated to build on that trusted system of record and automated transactions which can be done. And that's where you start seeing the value of blockchain as something that can automate external trust and transactions. So when you look at the sort of use cases we looked at, there was four. One was contracts management. Again, you have external parties. You could see why blockchain could play a role there, especially now with AI and automated legal. The other one was roaming, which is live. So again, with roaming, you have different telecommunications providers. The users of those telecommunication providers roam when they travel onto different networks, and you have a settlement. So that is live, and you have telco parties who want to automate those transactions. The third one was digital identity, and that one didn't take off because I think it was before its time. And also, when you start looking at self-sovereign digital identity and identity models now, they have to come from something like the EU. So you start to see the
I
EU
100%. Yeah.
EIDAS 2.0 and digital identity wallets. So I think that was not the right time for that. So that one didn't take off. And then the fourth one was the one that founded Pairpoint, which is owned by Vodafone and Sumitomo. I believe it's the biggest a sort of platform, a telco platform involving Web3 in the world. And a Pairpoint was an IoT use case. So it was basically saying, could blockchain provide trust between IoT devices who were previously siloed? So if you have a car from Mercedes and an EV charger from Shell, for example, they have no way of trusting each other, right? Because the data from the EV charger goes back to Shell and the data from the car goes back to Mercedes, right? Or whatever car manufacturer owns it. We were saying, okay, what about if we could democratize that, right? If we could unleash that and build trust. So automatically on a blockchain, the charger could trust the car, or any other devices could trust each other. And what about if they trusted each other, and then we can have a digital identity and verifiable credentials, which could talk about payment and what they're allowed to transact or not transact and the tariffs associated with
Wow.
that. What about
Yeah.
if we had a smart contract which could automate the payment between them, and then all of a sudden you've got 20 billion IoT devices that can now generate data,
Yeah.
that can now start trusting each other, that can now start transacting with each other, which is the foundation of what we call the economy of things. And more recently,
Absolutely.
that's extending to incorporate the economy of AI, because actually, some of the things we're looking at with some of the regulatory bodies in telcos and others is about data, right? And if you look at the big problem you have now is that there's a lot of excitement about AI models and applications. You've got Grok, you've got ChatGPT, you've got loads of others out there. You've got DeepSeek, etc. But they're based on public data, right? Public data is now utilized. Where do you go next? How do you move AI into business, right? How's it going to know about car rentals? How's it going to know about supply chains? How's it going to know about all of these things? Unless it has business data which is being fed into the language models and being trained, right? And how can you really be effective for AI to be real time, or make real time decisions if you can't incorporate real time data? So then you start having the extension of, okay, how do you get data from these devices that we've democratized and enabled to transact into large language models? So those are some of the things we're working on now, along with how you can then bring intelligence to the edge and transact that using AI agents and agentic frameworks. So some of the foundations that we laid all those years ago in terms of economy of things enablers for Pairpoint are now enablers for the AI economy in business. So really exciting. But yeah, those are some of sort of the areas. Some of the other things where you have uses is that, remember the statement I made earlier. We're building a new digital infrastructure for a new digital world, right? A new digital infrastructure for a digital world. I was listening this morning and on the radio, and they're sort of saying, okay, we're building this new infrastructure, and AI is part of it, right? It's going to be part of it because if you don't have access, if a country doesn't have access to AI, and people don't have access to AI, how are they going to how are they going to be able to to be a part of this AI economy? Apologies.
No, no worries at all. I was really enjoy the conversation though. One thing about this conversation is I'm really grateful that you chose the example of a car in the new age and an EV charger, because when people think about IoT devices, the first thing that comes to mind is heat sensors, because that's what we all experimented with. IoT
Yeah,
devices are so much more, right? There are everything is an IoT device these days, and everything is capturing data basically, and it's connected to the internet in real time.
correct.
I remember reading somewhere that Tesla is not just a car company, it's one of the biggest companies that collects your data, your road data, your travel data, right? And this example fits perfectly. You can trust an ecosystem and you can control your data if you have blockchain backing those IoT devices. So that's one part. But does this whole scenario feel familiar to you? I'll see. I'll specify what you're hinting at. You probably would have seen this. I saw a movie. That's why I know. I'm talking about the early BlackBerry days when they innovated the telco model and they brought about such a big revolution that telco providers could see a phone becoming a server, interacting with the main server and expanding network to millions of people rather than restricting. Does it feel something similar?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it, Haman, right? We're moving the whole. So we had, we moved from factories and companies that were file based and paper based. Then we moved to mainframe computers, right, where you'd have data stored at a specific location on premises, and you had clients, i.e., computers that would be able to tap into that mainframe and share information, update information, use applications. And then you moved into cloud. So then the same mainframe model was available at different locations. And then you had the liberation of moving into mobile, right? And that's the wave that the wave that all the telcos have enjoyed, where essentially you can do everything on an application on your mobile, and that was massive. But now something really powerful is happening as we speak. Something really powerful is happening. You're moving from the mobile centric model to interact with applications, services, and content, and we're now on the verge of the agent based architecture, where agents will be the interface between us, services, and content, not mobile. And what that means is that some of the things we've done. So first thing is, in order for agents to be able to do that, they need to have data, right, beyond public data. And that's why some of the things we've done to bring, to democratize and liberate business data and provide trust and allow the devices to share data across each other and into LLMs is going to be absolutely critical to this transformation to the agent-based architectures and frameworks. But the other thing is that you need to then have the agent as the focal point, as the interaction point. So no longer do you need a handset, right? And to use a handset, you can speak, right? You have natural language translations. You have agents who can predictively act on your behalf. They predictively find things based on your location, based on past patterns, patterns of behavior, etc. And as you move to the agents become the middleware. So the agents become the middleware who act on your behalf. You can either prompt them by voice or text, or they can act predictively. And we're moving into that framework where essentially the focus on having a physical device interaction point is gone, right? But you still need connectivity. All agents need to be connected, or people need to be connected even more, and devices need to be connected even more, and we need the data from them. So I think the role of the telco evolves, and I think it grows as we move from the mobile phone handset centric world into the agent based world. And I believe that some of the things that we've done at Pairpoint, to get devices to trust each other, to open that economy of things, to facilitate capabilities for devices to share data into LLMs, and then also for them to be able to trust agents as well and have agents at the edge, is going to be critical to this new AI economy that's emerging in this new agent-based architecture.
Absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with you on that part. And I believe one of the reasons that this has now become a reality, that we can imagine this future, is a very key component that you are using at Pairpoint as well, account abstraction. Is that right?
Yeah.
So while
Okay.
all of us have been talking about account abstraction for a long time, its actual use is how machines can have a presence, how machines can interact on our behalf on the internet, and how they can hold and transfer value as well, just because they have that reference on the blockchain. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think AI makes machines intelligent potentially, and account abstractions enables machines to be able to transact, right, and to have what we call an intelligent point of sale based on wallet interaction and account abstraction at the edge. And account abstraction is a liberation, right? Because what we're learning now, one of the things we're seeing is a resurgence of layer ones, right? I'm talking to a lot of protocols, and they're sort of saying, okay, we were on this layer one, we were on this layer one, now we're starting our own layer one. I'm thinking, okay, I got that wrong,
Yes,
right?
everyone is doing
5 years
that.
ago, I predicted that you would see a convergence of layer ones, and
Yes.
layer ones would be a utility. May still happen, but now what we're seeing is a lot of people starting their own layer ones. And those layer ones are generally EVM compatible, right? And
And
then
they're
you have
purpose built. It's a
yeah,
new shift as well. It's not like just any layer one that they are trying to compete with each other. People now understand that if they have a particular use case, they need to have a infrastructure backing that. It's like having
correct.
your own server. It's simple as
Correct.
that.
Correct. But what does that mean? It means that models that we have and applications and use cases need to be multi-chain, right? That's the first thing. So you need to have interoperability across different chains. You use the right chain for the right solution, and you need intelligence maybe to do that. And it also means that you can't be tied to the accounts and the wallets on that chain, right? You need to liberate it, right? And when you start bringing AI to the edge of the wallet, you're going to go for the best chain, the best wallet, and the best chain that's going to give you the best use for what you're doing. And AI at the edge can help with that, and account abstraction facilitates that. And it also brings the world of crypto to the world of fintech, right? Because you can have account abstraction, you have externally owned accounts, and all of a sudden you can abstract away gas fees. You can start doing all sorts of intelligent things. And for the world of IoT, what we're doing is, our mission is to bring wallets and the ability to transact to billions of devices, right? 20 billion devices. Why can't you give them wallets, identities, give them the ability to transact so we can really power this new economy? And some people think, okay, that's really conceptual, but it's not, right? One of the biggest areas that's coming is AI robots, right? You're going to have AI robots on building sites. You're going to have more AI robots and general humanoid robots in factories, in retail environments, maybe coming into homes and replacing tradesmen that we have now. And as you start seeing these, and you'll have humanoid robots in the form of cars, right, that can drive themselves, which we're already seeing with Waymo, and Tesla will be launching that pretty soon. So as you move into the world of robots, actually they're a device, right? So they need to be connected. They need to have an identity. They need to be secured. They need to have a signature. They need to have security. But more importantly, they're going to need to be able to transact, right? You may be able to rent a robot for a week, right? How you go? You'll need to be able to transact with it. It will need to take payments, make payments on behalf of its owners. So you can start to see now and share data, right? Because the data from the robots will then feed into LLMs, which will make them more intelligent. So when you start going into that world, and we're expecting that there'll be 1.2 billion humanoid robots working among us by 2035.
Wow.
1.2 billion.
Wow.
So when you think about that, you're saying, okay, these capabilities that we're doing, extending telco plus to incorporate some of the features that we're pushing at Pairpoint, you're starting to say, okay, this makes a lot of sense now, right? Connectivity plus wallet plus identity plus transaction capabilities plus ability to sell data into AI, LLMs, plus the ability to bring agents and agentic frameworks back to the edge. Absolutely massive.
I think this also summarizes the vision that you had behind writing the book Business of the Metaverse, is because this is how Web3 and AI converges, right? It's how the world fits together in a sense, different puzzles that we have developed. And it's like the core of blockchain, how blockchain was developed. It was not just one invention, it was multiple inventions that came together to build blockchain. Similarly, these multiple inventions, Web3, humanoids, AI, smart meters, all of that come together to build this new digital world with the digital infrastructure that you talked about. Right? Amazing.
Correct. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. We need a new digital infrastructure to support a new digital world. And AI will be part of it. Blockchain will be part of it. Right? There are two technologies that will be absolute, and fintech will be part of it. Right. We're not going to have the whole system taken over by Web3 finance. Right? What you're seeing right now is a convergence, and you're seeing how Web3 can help fintech and how fintech can help to gain adoption of Web3 finance, right? So that's all part of the new digital infrastructure for the new digital world. And we're starting to see a transition to that as we speak.
100%. And so I understand now the motive behind choosing blockchain. Thank you so much for that amazing description of how it fits together. But what I wonder about, and maybe this can be a good insight that we can get from your first-hand experiences, when it comes to blockchain in the telco industry and these IoT devices, everything is important. Trust is important, consensus is important, volume is important, scalability, fees, everything is important. There's a fine balance. But still, if you had to select a layer on blockchain, what is the first, second, third factor that you would focus on? That, okay, this is a complete non-negotiable. I need this first for sure. Rest we can figure out later, but needs to be the number one factor.
So number one, security.
Security.
Number two, scalability.
Okay.
So TPS, the ability to scale, having a model for on-chain consensus, which is more harmonious with the telco consensus, right? I've always questioned why we need to go to validation and nodes on a block, right? Why can't we use cell towers and mobile phones and employ some of the massive scale we've got with 8 billion mobile phones and 20 billion IoT devices to provide intelligent consensus, right? Why can't we create chains of trust out of the cellular infrastructure? And Vitalik said this, right? He was sort of talking about how you could do validations and get consensus using mobile phones. And I believe that is something that will have to happen going forward. So I think scalability, a convergence with telco infrastructure are probably the two the two things. And then the third one is cost, right? Yeah, cost efficiency. So one of the biggest barriers, apart from regulation to adoption of blockchain and Web3 technologies in enterprise, has been regulatory certainty. And we're starting to see some of that now get in place. So we're starting to see more investment and more adoption. But the other one is gas fees, right? So you'll be aware that we had this thing about permissioned and public chains. My view is that the permission chain as a standalone is dead, but now you start to have public chains that can provide some permissioned and private areas, but it's on a public chain architecture, right? But then one of the drawbacks is gas fees, right? If you're in business, you need to fix your costs. What is my cost? What is going to be the cost of a transaction? The price of a native layer one token changes, so does the cost, right? It can go up or down. But that kind of volatility is a big put off to industry adoption. You can't, because you can't fix your costs. So the ability to abstract away gas fees or have cost efficiency and certainty for transactions is absolutely critical going forward.
So
Layer
I
twos
think that's somewhat.
have done something to stabilize that, but not enough.
Sorry.
And I said layer twos have gone some way towards lowering the cost with roll ups or whatever, but it's not enough. The core layer one, you need to have certainty. And some of
Absolutely.
these
And
layer ones we spoke about.
I was hinting towards that only. It's not enough, and that's where I think the purpose-built blockchains are now picking up, having our own layer one's own infrastructure, right? It's like you can use Google Cloud and AWS, but there is going to be cost. And on the contrary, if you set up your own server at your house, yes, there is an initial cost to build that. But on the long run, if your use case is really right and you have that volume, the cost is too low when compared to other options, right? And you can always sync up your server with a Google server later on if you need, or you can set up different servers, or you can increase the memory. You can do whatever you want because you have that flexibility, and you have somewhat security as well because it is at a location that you have. Obviously, it's not a good example to compare a blockchain ecosystem. It's too centralized to use as an example, but you get my point, right? A purpose-built blockchain is something that might solve this, and that's why I think most of the people that you talk to are shifting towards it. Even we are exploring our own layer one blockchain for certain tokenization of assets for our clients. Maybe go with a Cosmos based blockchain. It's a sad reality, EVMOS didn't continue, but maybe Avalanche based, maybe Ethereum based, whichever one is suitable, we just try to do that. But yes, I think that's where the whole key is. If you're able to build a purpose built blockchain which supports your use case, ensures security, scalability, transaction cost is automatically going to reduce in that regards. Amazing, amazing. So I have to get towards the tokenization aspect of the whole scenario. While it has been amazing to chat with you about the overall architecture, I know for a fact that you are tokenizing something amazing. Please shed some light on that.
So a few things. So tokenization was obviously at the core of everything we're doing, right? From a regulatory point of view, the market was not there. Utility for IoT devices is obviously something that's of great interest. But some of the things that we're looking at now is use cases to tokenize assets, right? So you would have seen that we did. It was publicized, it's public knowledge that we did something with Mastercard's token network, which is a tokenized deposits platform, and I think that plays a big part in it. Tokenized deposits, changes, tokens, repayment, on ramping, off ramping. But part of the use case we did then was, one of the based on what we can do is something called a Web3 asset as a service smart contract. So the Web3 asset as a service smart contract, the use case we did was EV charging, so electronic vehicle chargers, and essentially the problem that you had was massive targets for rolling out EV chargers, and the traditional financing method wouldn't work because it's going to be new players, right? New players without a track record of running EV chargers. So in some cases you have to build subsidies into it. So part of what we looked at as part of that MTN use case was how we could essentially tokenize the EV chargers. So in this case, we chose to make the EV chargers NFTs and wrap them with ERC20s so that you can invest in them, and essentially execute what we call an asset as a service smart contract. So the asset as a service smart contract, you need two things. You need proof of asset. So does the asset exist? Is it in the location it's meant to be in? And then you have to have proof of use. And that's where Pairpoint comes in, able to ensure that the device is where it says it is, ensure that the it hasn't been swapped or tampered with. But more importantly, every time that the asset is used, we can verify that and say, okay, the asset has been used, it's been used for this long. And then you can employ a smart contract to say, okay, for this transaction, this is how much money the asset generated for that transaction. And essentially, the asset as a service smart contract repays back the token holders based on use of the assets. You essentially flip on ahead traditional investment methods where essentially you're investing, and then at the end of the year, after costs and profits, you get paid back, or you invest and you get a fixed amount every month, right? Sometimes the fixed amount every month doesn't work for everybody. But in this, what you're saying is, okay, you can go into business with the asset operator, right? So if you're a shopping mall and you want to put 1,000 EV electric vehicle chargers in your parking spaces, actually you have different options now. Yes, you could go and get a loan from the bank and pay a certain amount every month where you take all the risk, or you could tokenize the charges, and the investors in the charges, will get paid back every time that charge is used, right? So you spread the risk. It's a different model, and we're seeing how that this could be used for a number of use cases now. So we're working on some exciting ones I can't announce yet. You will hear announcements coming in the next 2 months where we're employing the same sort of asset as a service smart contract for tokenized assets and investments and returns, but essentially for AI infrastructure. That's all I can say. I can't go into the detail.
Amazing. No, no, some amazing use cases, and I see why you kept on saying a digital environment, a digital infrastructure for the digital economy. This is the economy work, right? We have been talking about digital economy for a long time, but it was just an interaction over the internet. This tokenization part is what actual economy feels like, how we can create and envision it, and so many possibilities, as you mentioned. And there are so many more that just keep on popping, but we cannot obviously explore all of them. We have to figure out the best and the most important one that suits the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, Harman, I mean, I think it is an important distinction as well, right? So, you notice I called the smart contract and the model a Web3 asset as a service model and not a deep-in model, right? So, you have deep-in models, and I believe as we need this new digital infrastructure for the new digital world, it needs to be financed, right? And it needs to be equitable, it needs to be accessible, and it needs to be available in developing countries and different parts of the country and different socioeconomic groups, simply because going forwards, if communities and countries don't have access to the internet, they don't have access to AI, they don't have access to the metaverse, they won't be able to do business. As more and more business moves online, as more and more transactions are executed with agents, as the metaverse and AI agents become the tutors and the universities and the
Yes.
shopkeepers and the online, and you need to access them, right, to participate in this digital world. So I believe that deepen and the deepen tokenization models play an absolutely critical part in getting access to this infrastructure for communities and countries and socioeconomic groups, right? It's a way where you can pool together, and the tokenization models can make this infrastructure available in these countries. So I think that's critical. And there's another side which is, okay, how can you get institutional investors involved with enhancing infrastructure, maybe in developing countries or developed countries? And that's where our focus is with the asset as a service, Web3
Understood.
asset as a service smart contract, because that's more about big institutional investors coming in, investing in big networks, big infrastructure, and
Yeah.
essentially sharing the risk, right, with the infrastructure operators. But
that,
that
that
goes alongside with Deepin, which gets the community in to make it more equitable. Because you think about it, countries that don't. One of the key things that's happening is you're starting to see, these new models emerge where you're going to have robots in factories. Right? What do robots in factories do? Well, you no longer need to make your iPhone in China or India. You can make it in the US, right? Because you don't need cheap labor. Right? You have a robot instead, right? There's trees available 365 days of the year, 24 hours a day, right? All the time. And you make a capital investment and then it just works, right? So as you move from cheap labor, that's going to have a massive economic impact, and it starts to place the ability to then have access to robots and AI and metaverse, and absolutely critical to the ability to sustain your economy and international trade. So there's some big factors here, but I believe that deep in Web3 asset as service are at the foundation of the new tokenized models that will power this new infrastructure.
amazing. One thing that I really love about having this conversation with you is that how different, I'll say jargons that used to feel so difficult to understand, how they fit in so perfectly in the scenario and how you can imagine it, right? Because if you go out and ask any of the top blockchain platforms right now, either they are focusing only on deepin, only on account abstraction, only on tokenization, only on AI, but the real fun, or I'll say the real value, lies in how it all integrates together to give a very seamless integration of the whole ecosystem, right? And that's what you're building. Really glad, like really happy to see something like that at such a scale. Most of the questions that I have all have been answered in such a seamless manner, so I'm really thankful for that, David. I really enjoyed this conversation. I just have one last question for you, and it's an exciting one. Obviously you have been implementing this concept around the world in different aspects, but we all know there are certain smart city or dream city projects that keep on happening. There's a particular area where it first kicks off, then it becomes viral, then everyone starts understanding the environment's benefit, right? So what's that dream city for you, which you feel like will be the first fully on-chain smart infrastructure pilot for you?
that exists or conceptually?
Maybe an existing dream city which you would want to see working in this model, or if you wanted to create, where would you do that?
Yeah. So I say some of the exciting things that are happening. Obviously, NEOM in Saudi Arabia. Some of the stuff that's happening in the UAE, where you're starting to have blockchain-based public infrastructure and transactions and digital identity and tokenized assets. You saw the announcement about the UAE and tokenized real estate that's happened this past week. So I think that's it. But essentially, when I come from a personal point of view, I think that the technology can build harmony between people, assets, infrastructure, and services. So the dream city that I would see would have self-sovereign digital identity. As part of that self-sovereign digital identity, one of the verifiable credentials would be your phone number. And that phone number would ensure that everybody in the city could transact using their phone number and all of the checks and security around the phone number. But also, if anything happens in that city, or any of the assets or robots or devices that person owns, or agents acting on their behalf, they would have a delegation of that phone number so that we could always track any automated action back to a person or an entity for recourse, right, legally or financially. So I think that's important. And the other thing is that, with that self-sovereign digital identity and verifiable credentials and the phone number powering that, then you open up that city to all sorts of automation and automated transactions. So as we spoke about the agent-based architecture, that person and their phone number, with the phone number credential, they could have agents who would inherit that phone number credential and that digital identity to act on their behalf. And you would have agents in that city that would be able to take care of transport paths and other activities that smart citizen would have in that smart city. You'd be able to automate transactions. They'd be able to behavior based on environmental impact and financial impact and income. And you start to have a city that where we could really have the power of AI for good. Right, for good, meaning that the resources of the city could be efficiently allocated. You're focusing on the preference and the location of the individual, so they're not in town and they don't need to do things. And then you could have environmental impacts that could be implemented into smart contracts and behaviors. So I think that's the key, right? That is the key. A smart city I wouldn't want to see is one purely based on economics, right? Purely based on who can pay. But I think where you have digital identity and you have blockchain and you have AI, you can build in subsidies, right? You can build in a redistribution of income or redistribution of assets or redistribution of
More
behaviors.
fair redistribution as well, rather than
Exactly.
just classifying it, right?
Exactly. So that's kind of
Amazing.
what I'm thinking about. Obviously, another part of it would be tokenized assets in the city and smart
So
contracts running here.
I believe all these additional elements would be like, sprinkle a bit of tokenization, sprinkle a bit of zero knowledge proof deep in here, and that becomes
Correct.
a. It's like the
Correct.
whole
Yeah.
Powerpuff visual coming to my Powerpuff Girls visual, sprinkling this and creating them. So
Exactly.
it becomes the ideal scenario, right? And I'm going to steal that idea. I'll propose this to a university here. So we have a center of excellence in one of the biggest universities in India. They have almost 30 to 50,000 students in just one campus,
Amazing.
right? And
Wow.
it's lovely professional university. in North India. It's close to my home. I'll definitely propose such an ecosystem to them, and if possible, do a pilot with your guidance.
Love to see that. Love to be involved. No, thank you, Haman.
Thank you so much for your time today, David. I'm sure this insights would help a lot, to help our audience understand so many nuances of blockchain, so many jargons that are simplified in such a good manner. Honored to have you here today with us. I'm looking forward to more conversations in the future.
My pleasure, Haman. Thank you for having me.